Okay, so obviously the first thing we've got to talk about is the end of the chapter where, after having suffered their biggest defeat on Sabaody 2 years ago, the Straw Hats, but more specifically Luffy, once again come to blows with Kizaru. And if I'm being honest, I'm kind of of two minds about this setup. On the more obvious side, I am hyped to see this fight go down, because even though it's pretty easy to write the Navy off as just inconsequential at this point, especially after something like Wano where Luffy went toe-to-toe with the Yonko in the form of Kaido and even Big Mom. I think going up against anyone of Vice Admiral or Admiral level is still an important measuring stick for the Straw Hats, just so we kind of have an idea of where they're at in terms of progress and how far they've come. And again, who better to put that to the test than Kizaru, an admiral, but also the man who is, at least in part, responsible for the total decimation of the crew, 2 years ago. Let's be real, he completely absolutely wrecked the crew 2 years ago, and this is a nice little bit of revenge on Luffy's part if he can manage to go toe-to-toe with them. With that said, however, there is the other side of this coin I'm having a little more trouble squaring, which is to say, despite having just made the case for why I'm hyped for this fight, there is that little voice in the back of my mind screaming, why does it have to be Luffy? It's one of those things where, among the monster trio, I feel it almost goes without saying at this point that Luffy can probably go pretty much toe to toe with an admiral and on equal footing with them. But when it comes to when it comes to characters like Sanji and Zoro, on the other hand, that's a little more up in the air, as it feels like they haven't really had that moment to really test their skills against such an opponent. I mean, don't get me wrong, we did have a brief Zoro versus Fujitora fight in Dressrosa, but Doflamingo kind of interrupted that one. And as much as I hate to feed into the meme that Oda hates the character, for as many amazing fights as Sanji's had, it feels like he's just straight up hasn't been given that opportunity at all. Now, it could still happen, and I'm not saying it won't. It's just a matter of when, and even bigger question if this is even is that moment. I don't know. I'm sure I'm overthinking it, but I couldn't help but listen to the voice in my head in that sense. And again, I'm gonna need you guys to kind of comment down below as to what your thoughts on this are, because I still personally am hyped for the fight of Luffy versus Kizaru. It's just, is there a better candidate among the monster trio to have this fight with, to have this fight with Kizaru? But yeah, that's just my quick thought on it. Moving away from that, though, the rest of the chapter pretty much sees the worst case scenario happen, from Kizaru taking control of defeating Sentomaru and taking control of the Pacifistas, and with the tide turning, Lucci chose to also make his move against the Straw Hats, which, yeah, definitely isn't out of character for the guy, but it is kind of interesting to me that he waited until now to make his move. But, because in a twisted sense, it does kind of show his development again, that he's not as much of the lone wolf acting on his own authority kind of person anymore. If he ever ends up in this, it kind of shows that if he ever ends up in a situation like the one he was in with, hold up with the Straw Hats, he's now willing to kind of wait and bide his time for the right opportunity to strike, or when he feels like he's been given indirect orders upon which to act. And yeah, the Navy taking over did kind of give him that go-ahead. I think gave him that go-ahead in his mind to kind of act, and which I openly admit I definitely ate my words on this one, as I was sure the stalemate was going to last long enough for the Straw Hats to make it off the island, and after that point is when things were going to start blowing up in everyone's faces. But I guess with how much control we've seen Sentomaru have over Pacifistas through the series, it makes sense that he would be the linchpin that would turn the tide on everything going on, that the moment he was defeated is the moment that everything would kind of go to shit for the Straw Hats again. And with that being the case, we also get a flashback of when Sentomaru first met Kizaru and Vegapunk. And it is interesting how Sentomaru did grow to respect both of them for teaching him and making him into the man he became today. But ultimately, his respect for Vegapunk is the only one that lasted throughout the years. Especially now that he feels like Vegapunk has been betrayed, he's definitely gonna choose Vegapunk over Kizaru each and every time. Even though he has respect for Kizaru and his strength, it's like you pretty much threaten the man who saved my life, who gave me a life. Yeah, I'm gonna fight your ass. Like I kind of respect Sentomaru for that. Like it's interesting in that respect. One thing I do gotta say that I really loved about this chapter, though, as well as Sanji's quick thinking. Like immediately after Lucci killed Stussy, he grabbed the bubble gun and contained Kaku. So now it's really only Lucci we have to contend with, at least for now. So even if the Kizaru matchup might not have been the one I entirely wanted, I do like how we still got to see a bit of Sanji's quick situational thinking in the moment. And yeah, I'll be honest, Lucci versus Zoro was not a fight I ever had on my One Piece bingo card, but I am intrigued where Oda takes this one, because Lucci definitely feels like one of the more unconventional opponents for Zoro to face. But I still do like it when Zoro's opponent profiles kind of does get shaken up a bit. Like, the only question is how long any fight with Lucci is gonna last, because this is the kind of fight where Zoro might leave a few blind spots for Lucci to exploit. And hell, the more I think about it, even though Luffy has Haki at his disposal, I do also wonder how well Luffy can even do against Kizaru specifically, because Kizaru seems to be like the type of admiral who was kind of in a way tailor-made to fight Luffy, as by virtue of being a light man, all of his attacks can't necessarily be bounced back. Like he's got the whole the sacred jewel technique, which is basically a bullet, which is basically a light bullet, and those aren't the type of bullets you can necessarily bounce back. But then he's also got the light sword, which is gonna cut through rubber like butter. So yeah, it's like all of his and don't get me wrong, I know that's kind of the case for Logia powers in general, but when it comes to like the whole thing of Luffy versus Kizaru, that especially feels like the case for Kizaru's very specific power set. Like it does feel like Kizaru has a very specific power set that is tailor-made to fight Luffy in some ways, when it comes to Logia powers. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. From my Twitter, Analyst Control. Be sure to notification bell, hit the subscribe button, and just share it around, guys. Dark Knight signing off. Later, everyone.